No, I'm good. I'm gonna be here all day.
Okay, dope. So anyway, again, I appreciate your time, good brother. And I'm excited. I'm excited to just have this opportunity for us to chop it up a little bit, especially after our time together in Philadelphia, where I enjoyed my time with you. So I'm grateful that we have this time right now.
Yeah, me too.
So once again, thank you, man. And again, what I do with this platform, Brother Stephen, is just try to highlight stories of post-incarceration success with hopes of leaving breadcrumbs or hopes of just, encouraging others who are coming behind us. Because there's lots of people who look like us, who don't look like us, but they're coming out and they need a roadmap.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that, your story, like other people's stories, can help add on to that roadmap.
I took a few notes from the questions you left just so I could reflect and think about them and be on point. But yeah,
Right on.
I think it's funny that almost verbatim, it's pretty much how I've been living my life these past 16 and a half years since I've been home. It's about, it's weird because for those of us who've been through the experience, like everything else in life, I guess it becomes second nature. We become jaded to even our successes. And so when I tell people what I've done and they look at me like, I just told some coworkers today, we have, like I told you, we're packing, right?
Yeah.
So our summer intern is here, who's an awesome student. I think she's a three-year law student. And then her fiance is here to help us out. He's into marketing and business.
Mm-hmm.
And I just shared a little bit about, my experience. And they were like, when's the book coming out?
That's
I'm
right.
like, you really but I this that kind of thing, but I think that is super important. It's the breadcrumbs. It's like people want to know how you did it because they're also going through stuff. We're all going through stuff.
Yeah. And nobody really likes going back to prison.
Oh no.
You know,
Oh no.
I
Although, I went back as a civilian. We'll get into that. I went back as a civilian with my suit and tie on.
and that's different because I used to tell myself the same thing. When I get out of here, I'm coming back, and I'm coming back with my suit and tie on with my own gear on.
Yeah.
And I was talking to somebody recently. No, this was back in 2020. I was talking to someone. I was getting ready to go to Sing Sing to do a talk in Sing Sing. And I was telling some guys I was with, and there was a guy who didn't know us really, but he was there. And I'm like, I'm about to go back to prison, y'all. I can't wait to go back. And this dude was looking at me like, man, you're crazy. Come to find out he had just got out from doing 20 after like 2 or 3 years ago. But so yeah, I'm feeling. So yo, tell the people who we talking to, because I know you, but the people who gonna be listening, like, well, who is Craig talking to?
So Stephen Mangual, affectionately known as Brother Humble, name that I picked up actually while I was in Rikers Island. And it evolved. And so almost everyone that I know throughout my 14-year incarceration knows me as Humble. So that's a distinction, when we talk about the historical moments in our lives, and so people before incarceration know me as one, AKA, then there's but yeah, Stephen Mangual, currently the Justice Advocate Coordinator for Latino Justice Pearl Def. I am the Justice Advocate Coordinator of the Southeast region. And for those that don't know, Latino Justice is a national civil rights organization. Our bread and butter is still litigation. Most of my co-workers are what's called public interest attorneys. They are advocate attorneys. So we, sometime around, mind you, Latino Justice is almost a 51 year. Actually, yes. As of July 28th, we are 51 years old. So we've been fighting for Latino civil rights using the law, litigation, direct advocacy, education, to bring about huge change around, how the laws are used, discrimination against Latinos, and also we use the law. So we identify, issues, and we create litigation campaigns around it. So my supervisor, Jorge Renal, who's a national criminal legal person for us in the Midwest, but he's also the national. He has written bills, and he's pushing a lot of those of us that are working on our pillar to be involved and proactive. If not in writing legislation that's going to be, successful and helpful to our community, to make sure that we support legislation that's going to be, bring about huge change and protect the rights of not just those of us who are either formerly incarcerated or directly impacted, after the fact, But at the front end, you know, at the prevention level, we're hugely supportive when it comes to prevention. We are, first and foremost, Latino justice is guided by 6 pillars. You may see things from CAP leadership, which is where they train the future leaders, the future folks who are going to be, you know, attorneys, litigants, advocates in the criminal legal field. We've been doing immigration work for many years. We've guided one of the most busiest pillars is the voting rights pillar. Obviously, with everything that's happening nationally, Latino justice has been very instrumental in our voting rights pillar and work. And I'm part of what's called the criminal legal pillar. So we, and because I'm a non-attorney advocate, it also lends on to some of the historical evolution of the organization, where we went from total litigants to now hiring non-attorney advocates, because they always knew that. And so we've been doing that. We're one of the, we're the lead. You know, I like to, you know, to take ownership and say that Latino justice is the lead when it comes to criminal legal, specifically uniquely Latino-centric views. We are the ones that, you know, and thankfully, way before my time, Juan Cartagena, I mentioned my supervisor, Jorge Renaud, Jeronimo Saldana, who used to be with, they created pretty much this pillar and this work because they knew the importance. And we've been doing it for about 15 years, pretty much, where it comes to, yeah. And so I came on board as a non-attorney advocate almost 3 years ago now. And the state of Florida, Florida is the anchor state, but the work has expanded. All of our work has expanded to not just be 1 or 3 states, but actually regional. So that's why I mentioned the Southeast region. So we're in the Southeast region, we're in the Northeast region, where the main office is in New York City, and then we're in the Midwest in the Texas. So, but altogether, we've been pretty active.
And Latinos are everywhere, so you need this work everywhere.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's one of the reasons why they even opened an office here in Florida and Orlando, because for many years we were already doing work. So Latino justice has been in the state of Florida and in the Southeast region. I want to say going 20 plus years. So way before the 2010 census. Because we were always involved in that kind of work in, you know, how do we figure out where the resources need to be, because our population has been growing. And so we've been here involved in that big time, and all the redistricting and the mapping and all that's been taking place during the census. Latino justice has been involved, but they opened the office here, I want to say about 9 years ago.
Right on. And
so we've been here physically about 9 years ago, and about 4.5 years ago, maybe a little more, they opened the Texas office, and we actually have a physical office there now.
Okay, right on. So what makes you want to do this work, you know, after doing however much time you did? You know, you've been locked down, you clearly probably were doing stuff that brought the police to your attention on a negative end, that got you in prison. But then
funny, I don't think there's much I had to do in my life growing up a poor Puerto Rican in the South Bronx to get attention.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Because some of us don't have to do nothing but just exist and be in certain neighborhoods.
I grew up in New York City. I grew up in the Bronx under, you know, racial profiling and broken windows and you know, all of these police tactics that were practiced, you know, and are currently still practiced in other iterations. You know, they can't be outright racist and say, but it's still happening. I grew up, that's how I grew up. I was poor. My mom came from Puerto Rico when she was 9 years old, had me at 19. You know, I didn't know who my father was, you know. And so by the time I was 8 years old, I was in the street already. You know, I was running around in the streets, hanging out with dudes. This is the late 70s, early 80s. By the time 1981 came, you know, my mom was alone. My 2 stepfathers were gone. So now, you know, 12 years old, I'm on the corner of Brian Lafayette and Hunts Point selling bud, carrying guns at 12 years old. At 12, seeing dudes get shot, you know. So I didn't really have to do much. You know what I was really doing? I was just trying to survive. I was looking for a family. I was dealing with poverty and shame and you know, just lack of you know, proper interventions and guidance. Not that my mom didn't do the best that she can, you know. I don't blame her, and she did the best she could. She kept the roof over our head as long as she could, but she too suffered from drugs and alcohol addiction. And eventually I lost her to that by the time I was 19. So my first arrest was at 14 years old. You know, what was it for? We were boosting, you know.
Trying to live.
Poor, I was broke. Everybody got sneakers. You know, this is pre-crack era. and we started stealing to sell, to make money. That from there, it went into drug dealing. That's all we knew. We were in the street. That's all we knew. That's what came, and that's what we excelled at. Because funny thing, we created a family. We created an organization. We weren't, organized like people say, oh, we're organized crime or we were a gang. No, we were just, all young peers with being raised by single moms who also were suffering poverty. And so we were like, how are we going to respond to it? We're going to respond to it by getting together and making money the only way we know how. And so, I was arrested like 5 times by the time I turned 20. And the last arrest was a serious violent crime, drug-related violent crime. And by this point, I had already been through so much. Like I witnessed so many shootings and deaths and, dodging bullets and my friends being shot and me rushing a friend of mine that was dying in my car to the hospital so he could live, all before I was 21 years old.
That's trauma, bro. That's trauma.
All of it. And so not to take away from, my responsibility, I'm accountable. I still picked up that gun. I went, I did what I did, and I'm responsible. And I live with that. This is 1992, 31 plus. And I live with that every single day of my life.
But you talked about something though, Stephen, that's like really common amongst most of us or many of us who've been to prison, and that is we come from single parent homes, a lot of us. A lot of us come out of poverty. A lot of us, our parents have had substance abuse, mental health issues, So it makes me wonder, is this stuff by design? Because no matter where you are in the country, it's the same set of symptoms or issues that seems to drive us towards these behaviors that end up getting us locked up. Because you're not alone. I'm not alone. We're not alone.
Yeah. No, we have, oh my God. I mean, we know that the numbers are, when you're talking about the data, there's over 60 million of us that have been directly impacted or have come in contact with the criminal legal system and criminal punishment system. Yeah. New York, New Jersey, Chicago, Philadelphia, right here, Orlando, Pine Hills, everywhere. It's us. We didn't create the environment that we were born into.
Right.
And yet, not all of us do what I did. Not all of us do that. Others have been able to deal with growing up in these environments in other ways. I and some of us, many of us, we're just not one of those. And why? I mean, I could tell you for my and the the research shows that all of us who created violent crime were first witnesses and survivors of that violence as a very young age. We didn't know how to process it. I was getting my ass whipped, from the time I could walk. And not just from my mom, but my 2 stepfathers, and then from all of my peers, and it's fighting in school. And so I experienced all of that before I threw my first punch. I learned how to dodge and weave and deal with being a victim of that, and learning that, maybe might does make right as an adolescent thinking, right? Because this is what works. So we need to have that might. And so, it was that kind of thing where there was no real intervention, where someone was teaching me the life skills that I needed to deal with all of these issues, poverty, shame, being exposed to all of this trauma. There was no healing, and then of course, not believing that I had, and many of us have, any economic opportunities. Forget about it. I mean, it's just logical to say, okay, well, I'm gonna wind up being one of those that winds up in the prison system and the jail system, and winds up committing, acts that I learned along the way, and not to excuse them, because I I think back in hindsight, I'm like, dude, like, how did you even survive all of that? And why? And so I guess this is why I'm here, right? Today is why.
Right. And as you're talking about your experience growing up, again, a lot of it resonates with me. But what I imagine as you're talking about it is a young tree. When you got a young tree, and you put like some sticks next to the young tree, and then you put some wires in it, you know, around it so that it don't bend and it just grow straight up.
Mm-hmm.
But here, what I was seeing was a young tree with a rope tied around the top of it, pulling it down to the ground. Okay. So as it's growing, it's already growing bent. It's not even growing straight. And that's been many of our stories. You know, we've had so much against us or working not in our favor that we end up growing bent or jaded and not growing up straight, living towards our fullest potential until we become grown men like you and I. Then we start realizing, man, I got a lot of potential. But for whatever reason, I was unable to acknowledge it or recognize it or, you know, on and on. But what made you flip over? What made you turn? What made you start going the opposite direction of all of this that you share with me about growing up? And when did that happen?
For a lot of us, I guess for a lot of us, that's the existential question.
Yeah.
Like for normal folks, the existential question has to do with their existence and why am I here? And for us, it's like, how did I go from carrying a gun every single day in my waist and being able to pull that out at any moment, daylight, daytime, crowds of people, fearlessly put my life on, and today be like, oh my God, I can't even watch a horror film because I don't have the stomach for it. Oh my God, I see a film about a father and his family. I'm here bawling and crying. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, what happened? And you know, it started in prison. It started in prison. As soon as I got to Rikers Island, it was like, and I'm facing a life bid, and all of my peers are facing life bids, and the months are going by. You know, I spent a year and a half in Rikers Island, and it was there that I started educating myself. I started really learning about history and culture, and I started getting involved in these different types of cognitive behavior therapies. I was doing circles in Rikers Island because there was this lieutenant that used to come in, this beautiful black strong sister, dark skin. Oh, I loved when she used to come into the dorm because, you know, all the white COs would act different. Everybody's like, and they be pissed off too because she's coming through and she got authority, so they got to straighten out. I used to love seeing that because it was very rare. Mind you, this is 1993. I'm 21 years old, 22. 20, I turned 21 in Bronx, 22, and I went upstate 23. And she would come in and be like, all right, turn the TV off. Come on, all of y'all, come on in here. And she did it in a way that we had to listen to her because it was in love. It wasn't punishment based. She knew how to reach us.
It was like auntie was coming through.
And we were like, oh, put everything away. You know, if dudes was doing something that they weren't supposed to be doing, even though, you know, whatever, we was like, yo, but we stopped playing games and went into that day room and stood in a circle and did a circle with her. And that was the very first circle I took part in.
Y'all felt
there forward, you know. But yeah, my real transformation came when I started like those little bits and pieces. As soon as I got upstate, I'm sentenced to a minimum of 8, a maximum of 24. And now I'm going upstate where I'm thinking I only have like 6.5, 7 years to do. I wound up doing another 12.5. I did 14 altogether. As soon as I got to my first state facility, I did 14 years altogether. And between Rikers Island, a year and a half in Rikers Island, and then the other 12.5 upstate in like 10 different facilities, including upstate correctional facility towards the end, which is all box. I did 127 days extreme isolation there, which is one of the reasons why I still suffer a lot of the PTSD today. Mind you, I came out of the box in 2005. But let me backtrack. When I got to my first state facility, I was still a Latin king. I was a Latin king for like maybe the first 2.5, 3 years of the incarceration from Rikers Island to my first state facility. And I mentioned that because of this, because there was where I started learning about my identity and having pride in being a Boricua, a Latino, a person that's part of this larger struggle, a person who is born out of oppression. You know? And I was reading, like I just started reading. I became a mentee. I had all these mentors. I met folks who at this point, this is 1994, 95 when I was in Eastern. Dudes already had 20, 25 years in,
Mhm.
30 years in. I was walking over the yard of guys that had 100 to life.
Mhm.
And I was like, whoa.
Mhm.
And it was there that, it started where I was like, you know what? This is not where I want to be for the rest of my life. And I have to take the steps. I don't know what they are, but
Mhm.
I have these folks that are telling me, Stephen, this is where you start.
Mhm.
And read this book and give me back your reflection.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then I wind up enrolling in the college program because they were like, we still had tap and pell. So I
Yeah.
enrolled in the college program in 1994.
Yeah.
I got 2 semesters in before they took away tap and pell from us.
Mhm.
And then I met students and survivors of the Attica Rebellion of 1971.
Mhm.
Students of Eddie Ellis and Larry White and Blood and all the folks that came out of the Greenhaven think tank of 1975.
Yeah, you
That was,
shared some of that with me when we met
yeah,
in Philly.
that when I met them, when
Mhm.
I met those leaders, which was when I got to Woodburn in 1996 and became a student, 1996, 97, became a student of the non-traditional approach to prison and criminal justice, it changed my life
Mhm.
completely. Even though I had 2 semesters in college, I was studying, I was deeply into, they helped me really become someone who believed himself to be other than, when they say, oh, Brian Stephen, we're not the worst. Don't identify me as the worst act that I committed because I'm better than that. We all are, right? This is 99. Before I even heard about Brian, Eddie Ellis and the folks in the non-traditional approach taught me that, you know, you are better than this.
Mhm.
And let me give you the expertise in academia to
Mhm.
help suppress that, the research.
Yeah.
They taught me how to speak. They taught me how to write. They taught me how to present myself. They taught me how to walk. They taught me how to, really present myself, even within the prison system.
Could I say then that you were born again?
That's a very interesting term. Yeah.
Yeah, you were born again. You know.
into into this historical movement
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't really understand that I'm still learning about still.
Absolutely. From cradle to grave, probably, from the time you start till the end of your life, you can continue to learn because the history is so rich and so deep. And thanks for sharing that with me, bro. And I got goosebumps over here, and I was almost brought to tears listening to you, because it all is so reflective of my own story. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, it's very touching. And my hope is that other people who are listening to this or who get a chance to
Hmm.
listen to this have had these types of mentors that you and I have had,
Hmm.
and are becoming mentors,
Hmm.
and passing on the lessons, as Nas would say in one of his songs about hip hop, carry on tradition. We have to pass it on. We have to empower our younger brothers and sisters as you and I were empowered by these old timers, you know.
Hmm.
So thanks for sharing
I
that,
think
man.
it was Blood that used to, that coined the term "each one, teach many." And he's one of the ones, the survivors of Greenhaven think tank.
Okay, and that might be
He was
where
on
I
there.
got that from, because I
Each
picked
one,
that up back in
teach many. Yeah.
each one, teach many. Yep, and each one reach one. And so, you really, well, first, man, I just want to say thanks for being so vulnerable and sharing with me. One of the things I wanted to reach back and not really explore, but just touch on when it talks about vulnerability, you talked about, dealing with shame, dealing with poverty. And these are things that grown men our age
Mhm.
still are not willing to address, confront, and admit to. And so just kudos to you. And that speaks to your own self-power, man, you know.
Mm.
That
Thank
speaks
you.
to you. Yeah, man. But tell me, man, what do you think was or what was instrumental in helping you once you got out of the penitentiary? I know you said you've been out for 16 years, right?
16 and a half. This October, it's going to be 17 years.
Right on, man. Right on. December will be 25 or 26 for me. I don't
Ooh, wow.
count.
Nice.
Yo, I'll tell you, man, before we go back to that question, a guy told me, I can't remember who, but I was getting ready to get out. He said, yo, young, he said, you about to get out of here. I did 8 years on a 4 to 12.
Hmm.
He said, you about to get out of here. So now it's time to go out there and do 25 to life. I looked at him. He said, no, you go to the streets and do 25 to life in the streets.
Mm.
That hit me. I'm like, yeah, 25 to life in the streets, not in the penitentiary.
Yeah.
So I've done 25. I'm
Nice.
working on L now.
Nice.
you know, and so hopefully others will do the same, you know, and they'll follow behind us. But what was your big support? What do you think was most supportive of you getting out of prison and helping you stay on the straight and narrow?
So I remember when you sent the questions in preparation for this,
Mhm.
um, even backtracking just a bit, it's like, did I even know what I was going to do when I got out? That I had no idea.
Mhm.
I had no idea. I had 2 college semesters. I had all these trainings. I was a peer educator for the Prisoners for AIDS Counseling Education. That was my big thing, HIV/AIDS, understanding that, and I did aggression replacement training for many years as a peer
RT.
facilitator, AVP for many years. And on my way out, I was a peer educator for transitional services, and I was doing that. What we used to call pre-release now became
Right.
transitional service, but I'm OG. That's
Right,
always
right,
going to
right.
be pre-release for me
That's
in New
right.
York State. Um, I had a Rolodex of cards of organizations of folks that I was writing to and meeting with, because honestly, I didn't. I was released in 2006. I still was supposed to owe 10 years on parole, a violent felony offender, and I was unhoused and unemployed. And the only family sibling that I had alive was my little sister, and she was in a shelter herself.
Mm.
So my plan was to go into transitional housing that was for folks who had, substance abuse issues. I
Mhm.
had that in my history, many years. I go in to do the intake, and the guy says, "Okay, when was the last time you got high?" And I was like, "This is 2006, mind you." I said, "I was in Rikers Island, 94, 95. The CO brought in some stuff, so he was like, "Okay, when was the last time you drank?" I said, "Same year." He had brought in some alcohol, so we was drinking some alcohol too. And he was
Well.
like, "Well, you know what? You don't qualify. These are for people who have active substance abuse issues." I'm like, "I just came out of prison.
Right.
This is supposed to be my address that I gave to my PO." Luckily, my old childhood friend who had picked me up from Green, when I was released out of Queensboro. He had picked me up, and he was the one taking me over there. We came outside, and I was like, "Bro, this is the deal. Like, I need an address." I'm literally standing on Willis Avenue and 147th Street,
Mhm.
looking around, and I'm like, you know, $140 in my pocket. I had like $240. I was released with a $140 check, the most I was able to save. And my friend gave me $100.
Mhm.
Unhoused, unemployed, nowhere to go. We wind up luckily convincing a childhood friend that I grew up with, her family, to let me sleep in her living room.
Mhm.
And so one of my biggest supports, and the first support, was having that, family member. He's to me, he's family, because we went back. Remember when I was telling you the story about the brother that I drove to the hospital who almost died because he got
Yeah,
shot?
yeah.
That's him.
Okay.
We're still, connected,
Yeah.
and then from there, once I knew that I had a roof over my head, I leaned on the folks, the same network that I grew up with in prison.
Mhm.
And I was like, listen, all I need is an interview.
Yeah.
Less than a month after being released, I went, got my interview, and started my career in HIV around November of 2006, and did that for 11 and a half years. Went to school, got 2 undergraduate degrees. I got married. I had 2 kids. It's been quite the journey. My greatest support though has been that the network of folks that, first of all, I helped them. So the bro who was working as a case manager in that first nonprofit who
Mhm.
got me the interview was somebody that I did his parole package with back when he was going to for parole. He was in Otisville, and he'd been home
Oh,
for 4 years,
nice.
right?
Nice.
Same thing. We keep a network. My strongest network. My mentors that started in the prison system going back to 1996. They're still my friends and my colleagues and my
Mhm.
network to
Mhm.
date, folks that I go
Mhm.
to,
Mhm.
those that are home. And
So that
so,
support network is so important.
oh yeah, but I put the work in though. I put the
Oh yeah.
work. I went to school. I went to school. I went to school full time. I worked my career. I worked my ass off. My first job, I was at 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah. You were hungry. You wasn't trying to go back to the penitentiary.
I knew that I had to, you know, really stabilize myself in a way that was acceptable because I already had this violent felony offense.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You know,
It all makes
um,
so much sense to me because you're telling me my story. I keep telling you this, but it's the same thing. It was the same for me. I couldn't go back. I didn't want to go back. It hurt. Wasn't that I was afraid? It just hurt, and I had too much to give. But that support helped me move forward.
I met a lot of people that went back and forth because I spent 10 years in the same hub.
Yeah.
Which
So a
is
lot of people
the Sullivan County. So I used to see people coming back and forth. And then fast forward, I come home, and one of the questions some of those folks are actually like, how is it that, you know, when times were hard, when you was broke, listen, I'd rather be unhoused, unemployed, on the street with my physical freedom, right? Living in minimum security out here, outside the it's all minimum security for those of us.
There's always an opportunity out here.
Always.
Ain't no opportunity.
You know how many times I have been unhoused and unemployed since I've been home? I've restarted like 4 or 5 times. I'm no longer married. Like I'm divorced, and I had to start over even in my transition to being here where I am now in the Southeast these last years. Is also a new transition. And so, no, I got it out of my mind, out of my system, out of my heart. You know, like you, I was never gonna go and put myself and people that love me through that again. I still feel those handcuffs. I still feel that box time. I still feel that abuse and oppression. I still remember the fear that I may never get out of here alive. No, I couldn't do that again. I can't do that again.
You know, I wonder if this type of insight that we're talking about right now is if this is something that just comes with time and experience, you know, because it seems like
failure.
But it's failure. You know, failure is really that lesson to get it right the next time. You know, so maybe if you would have ended up back in prison, I would have ended up back in prison. Then we could say these guys have failed, you know, but we ain't failed. You know, I even went back for a violation, but I use that as grist to keep me going forward. So yeah.
No, and I have a lot of friends that went back too. I have a really good friend of mine went back, came, and now, you know, we do have our role to play. We do have our responsibility, but the reality is, like, you know, we live in a system that capitalizes off of our misery, our punishment, our failure, our incarceration. Our incarceration is a business, is a value to a certain group of people, you know, and it's horrible because not all of them understand.
Most of us don't.
What we go through. Even those right-wing punishment-based Republican legislators who are here in the state of Florida, who refuse to support any type of legislation or any type of policy that makes them seem soft on crime. They still say, no, I'm a punishment. 2023, they're saying that here.
Because that's political death, man. You know, that's political death. And, you know, people are willing to sell their souls for political status and financial status than they are to take good care of their fellow human being. But hey, Stephen, we're coming up on about 5 minutes left time together. So I just wanted to hit a couple of key points. And one is that what would be a piece of advice you'd share with a young Stephen?
So advice is tricky, right? I always play with folks when they say advice. I'm like, the best advice is not to take any advice from anybody. But
what would you tell young Stephen?
Wow.
Knowing what you know now.
First of all, seek help and therapy. I waited a long time to seek help. I speak freely now about it, but honestly, it was post-trauma. It was post already being in the system and being incarcerated, even post-incarceration. Seek therapy to deal with all of the trauma that you're going through, Stephen, and know that none of that is your fault.
Wow, that's powerful right there.
And that, you know what? Don't try to be anybody other than yourself, because that's who's going to be successful in the future. You, not the mask,
right?
Not portraying or pretending to be because of your insecurities and fears.
Right. And during those times in your life, though, same with me and probably a lot of people, during those times, we didn't realize we were insecure. We were afraid that we were struggling as hard as we were, you know. But looking back, hindsight is 20/20, right?
Oh, yeah.
And think about this too, Stephen, because we're talking about your journey. If you were to entitle your journey, something, what would you entitle it? Like that book, what would that book be? What would the title of that book be? Because it would be your journey.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I hadn't thought about that. What would mine? Overcoming.
Overcoming.
In one word, yeah.
Yeah. Dope.
Overcoming. If I needed a theme, it would definitely be something with overcoming and the process of healing.
Wow, that's powerful. And it's great hearing it coming from you. And not just you, Stephen, but from another man. Because I think more men and boys need to hear us talking about the importance of seeking help, getting therapy, working through, acknowledging our shortcomings instead of just stuffing stuff, you know. So thanks for that, man. And in our last couple of minutes, man, if folks wanted to reach you, how could they reach you?
So please go to the Latino Justice website and look for the work being done. Follow Latino Justice on all our social media platforms. We're on all of them, Twitter, IG. Stephen, I'm also on Instagram, on Facebook. My email, smangual@latinojustice.org.
Spell
But
that.
just look for Mangual, that's Mangual. Mangual@latinojustice.org. And definitely, no, there's no shameless plug. I love what I do. I love the org. I love being part of a national civil rights organization. And so please, you want to find me through Latino Justice.
Yo, man, thank you so much, man. Thank you so very much. This has been a powerful conversation. I really appreciate your time and your energy, man. Any parting words, any last thing you want to say? We got like a minute left.
Thank you, brother. Such a pleasure, Craig, man, that we met. Thank you so much for having me here. The only last words is not going to be mine. It's a mixture between Don Pedro and Jose Marti. All it takes is courage and sacrifice and being able to feel on your face a slap on the face of another. Courage and sacrifice and being able to feel on your face the slap of a face of another. Just being able to. But yeah, I love that. I love that. That's Don Pedro and Jose Marti.
Yeah. That's dope, man. That's dope. And with that, man, we're going to call it a wrap.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.